Why is ROTC largely absent from the selective private universities in general and from the Ivy League in particular? A prevailing account might be called the bad university, good military narrative. 4 decades ago, students and younger faculty rebelled against high culture, scholarly tradition, and their legitimate civic obligations. Today, the inheritance of that time, though much altered in substance and style, encounters an unconfident and spineless academic liberalism. But in contrast, the military is an exemplar of civic virtue, expressing the tradition of the citizen soldier and actualizing ideals of obligation and sacrifice in the nation's service. Today, however, opposition to restoring ROTC turns massively on the prohibition of service by open homosexuals. At Columbia, objections to Don't Ask, Don't Tell have dominated the discussion on ROTC for over 5 years. And reform of this law, or its repeal, better, is a prerequisite for ROTC's return. If Don't Ask, Don't Tell is repealed or sufficiently reformed, principled opposition to ROTC by a passionate minority will visibly emerge. However, if our experience at Columbia is a guide, and many of us think there that the balance of student opinion is likely to favor, or at the least permit, ROTC's return. Now, contrary to a prevailing belief, the Ivy League never actually banned, the word is often used, banned ROTC as such. A legislation in force then and now requires that commanding officers have professorial appointments and that the universities accept a curriculum prescribed by the Department of Defense. At Yale, Harvard, and Columbia, and elsewhere, this was the formal basis for the termination of ROTC in the years 69 and 70. At Columbia, a committee chaired in 1969 by a conservative political theorist, Professor Harvey C. Mansfield, who was the father, indeed, of the distinguished conservative political theorist at Harvard, who bears his name. That committee unanimously recommended the termination of ROTC if these terms could not be renegotiated. The Department of Defense withdrew ROTC programs at that time, and to my best understanding, had no choice given the terms of the relevant or the governing legislation. Of course, a passionate opposition to the Vietnam War drove the divorce between the Ivy League and ROTC. I well remember being alerted to intervene in fistfights between opponents of ROTC and students participating in that program. However, a concern with faculty autonomy was not solely a means to oppose the Vietnam War. As the Mansfield report put it in 1969, we regret that we did not take such action before the present mood on campus, but we cannot refuse to take steps to correct an academically irregular situation merely because of that need arose, that mood arose. At Yale, by the way, there had been quite a bit of discussion before the Vietnam period on the anomalous situation of ROTC in terms of academic culture. Today, I cannot imagine ROTC's return if this matter, that is the matter of faculty control over appointments and curriculum, is not resolved. Now, to be sure, exactly like objections to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it may offer a cover for it may offer cover, or camouflage, if you will, for unconditional opposition to ROTC. However, faculty authority over appointments and curriculum does touch the essence. And this problem will require thoughtful negotiation, drawing on the goodwill of both parties. The Mansfield Committee considered their recommendations to cancel, I'm quoting, exceptions from normal academic procedures which were granted during or immediately after World War II. This suggests a broad context in which to consider the vicissitudes of ROTC, World War II, the Cold War, and the inflamed moment of the war in Vietnam. During World War II, Ivy League institutions, like others, housed very large-scale training programs which produced young officers. From 1942 to 46, Columbia housed a midshipman training school that graduated 23,000 naval officers. In the next quarter century, its naval ROTC program produced 1,000 commissioned officers until the disruption of the late 1960s, and a similar pattern, of course, prevailed throughout the Ivy League and other private institutions. The normative setting, as it were, the point of departure, what we have in memory, and many of us, about ROTC programs, formed in the first 20 years of the Cold War. That pattern or that model, if and when, as I certainly warmly hope ROTC returns, that model will be significantly altered. In the Cold War, for the first time in its history, the nation was continuously semi-mobilized for war, the possibility of war, over an extended period.